Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, a free site. Always 1776.com, a free site. Today is October 10th, 2023. Let's talk money. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I'm just telling you my view of the world. Please do not consider anything I'm saying here to be investment advice. I want everyone watching this video to do their own due diligence. Right? Again, nothing I say in this video should be construed as investment advice. Now, as Bob Marley put it, there's so much trouble in the world. Right, folks? Things are falling apart. There are a lot of crazy things happening. Right? Murder, mayhem, torture, beheadings. Right? Make no mistake about it. But let me just say this as bluntly as I can. If you are the world's reserve currency, you cannot play games with the money. It's a mistake. No matter who the bad actors are, it is a mistake to punish them by playing games with the money, by cutting off their access to the SWIFT system, by freezing bank accounts, and things like that. Understand, it's not just about the bad actors. You have a whole group of people, a whole group of countries looking at how you handle the chaos in the world. And make no mistake, there's always chaos someplace. There are always bad actors someplace. I'm just telling you that there is a crowd out there that needs to know when they hold your currency that you're not going to play games with their access to that currency when you're upset, right? If you're going to do so, if you're going to cut off access, play games with the currency, then your reign as world's reserve currency is not going to have much longer to run. So as bad as things are right now in certain hotspots on the planet, right, just understand that if you hear that the United States government is taking steps to cut off bad actors or perceived bad actors from their financial assets that are denominated in dollars, you need to understand that dollar alternatives, notably gold, notably Bitcoin, are going to surge in value. Right? People are going to realize that when you know what hits the fan, the dollar is unreliable. Right? If the United States intends to have its currency remain the world's reserve currency, in my opinion, it can't allow that to happen. Let's continue. And also feel free to leave your comments in the comment section of this video. This is a free speech zone, right? You don't have to agree with me. I'm just telling you one man's opinion. Tell us yours in the comment section of this video. Let's continue. I need for people right now to realize that the inverted yield curve, where the interest rate that you're getting on the 6-month Treasury or the 2-year is actually greater than what you're getting on the 10-year and on the 30-year. Right? I need for people to realize that that's one of the biggest stories in finance right now. It makes no difference whether CNBC or Fox Business leads their telecasts talking about the yield curve. Folks, that's foundational economics. We've had an inverted yield curve now for several months. Well, guess what? It's uninverting, right? You actually have the 10-year increasing in value now. The interest rates on the 10-year increasing in value. It's only a matter of time before 20 years, 10 years have interest rates that exceed the 2-year. That's only a matter of time. Let me just point out that it's when yield curves uninvert that you get recessions, right? Don't go with what you perceive to be the IQ of some person who went to some Ivy League college when they're talking about their view of economics, right? Instead, I believe it's better to rely on the actual data. Folks, let me just say, and please get the relationship here. If you're holding bonds at current interest rates, and the interest rates on such bonds go higher, then the value of your bond that's locked in to maturity at the current rate will drop, right? Just understand that you have banks right now who have bonds that are underwater. The U.S. has had to quietly engage in really one of its biggest giveaways in history to backstop those bonds. The banking system, quite frankly, is on much thinner ice, in my opinion, than is being reported. I expect interest rates to continue to rise. What do you think happens when there are wars, when there are international atrocities? Right? Understand, wars cost money that often the groups fighting in the wars don't have. They start watering down their currencies to pay those bills. Understand too, wars use natural resources, right? Wars take energy. I'm not talking about just human emotion. No, I'm talking about oil and gas, electricity, resources, right? And so just understand, in times of war, you have spending, you have increased debt. Now there's the other side of the play. You have creditors who realize that the credit worthiness of their borrowers are taking a hit. So I'm expecting interest rates to rise. I'm expecting bond yields to rise. I'm expecting the long end of the bond curve to rise, right? I'm expecting 10 years, the interest rates for 10 years to rise, right? I'm not waiting for some Fed pivot because I understand the power of the Fed is limited. I'm not waiting for unemployment numbers to be revised as they have been extensively recently, right? Just understand, right now, you have a situation where the yield curve is uninverting, where longer duration treasuries are getting higher interest rates. And they should, of course, because if I'm going to tie up my money for 10 years, you better pay me more in terms of interest than you would pay me if I'm only tying it up for 6 months or 2 years. Right? So, folks, we're headed into a recession, and I need for people to think about history here for a moment. Right? How high can long-term interest rates go? And the answer is very. Let's go back in history. Did you know that in 1981, the 30-year reached 15.21%? 15.21%. Understand, back then, Gary Schilling, who's still around, please Google him. Gary Schilling thought that this was the opportunity of a lifetime. He recommended buying 30 years. Understand what that got him. That got him more than 15% interest for the 30 years per year, for the 30 years after he bought that bond. Right? Think about it. Well, folks, we're not even at half of 15.21%. And you have complete chaos around you, a $33 trillion debt here in the United States alone. You have Germany, as I make this video, formally in recession. You have wars in Ukraine and Israel. You have gas lines being disrupted. Right? Understand too, and people need to realize this. I know in the United States we talk about energy independence, right? Shale is the big savior. Shale exploration is extremely, let me repeat that word, extremely interest rate sensitive. So as interest rates rise, particularly long-term interest rates, as they rise, shale is going to take a hit. And folks, it's going to be substantial. So just understand, as energy resources dwindle, in part because of interest rate sensitivity, we're going to have a hard time replenishing our strategic petroleum reserve, aren't we? We're going to have a hard time filling up our own gas tanks, aren't we? Understand, even with the ridiculous bank giveaway that backstops bonds to maturity, right? Banks are going to have a hard time because they're holding an inordinate amount of bonds that don't match the current interest rates that you can get on bonds of the same duration. So what I want savvy people to understand is, if you know which way interest rates are going, you can make money. Right? I get that working class people seem to think that you can only make money during bull markets. Right? I'm just here to tell you that sophisticated financial players understand that you can make money in any market if you understand the opportunities. So right here, if you believe that long-term rates rise on, let's say, the 20-year bond, right, you can make a lot of money by investing in Direxion's bearish 3X bond ETF. The symbol is TMV. Again, it's TMV. Right? Folks need to realize that last year, TMV was up 151%. Right? 151%. Don't fall in love with what you're hearing from the Fed. because you need to understand the Fed has often been wrong. Go back through history when Ben Bernanke was trying to convince you that we didn't have a housing bubble. Right, folks? Don't just follow the Fed, follow markets. You understand that an inverted yield curve is a temporary phenomenon. Well, now it's uninverting. What does that mean? That means that the long end interest rates here are going up. Right, folks? They're going up. The ETF market is such that you have inverse ETFs. You have an inverse ETF that goes up in value when long-term rates go up. What do you think is happening in the world with all this credit card debt? Think about what the credit card companies are charging, 24%. What do you think is going to happen when you're competing against countries that are at war for resources like oil and gas? Right? So, folks, just understand. History tells us, not some wonk on TV, not some politically appointed person. Um, History tells us that as the yield curve uninverts, you have recessions. Right, folks? You're going to have more unemployment. History tells us that when banks are holding a lot of bonds and the interest rate rises and bond yields rise, the value of the bonds they're holding that they bought when interest rates were lower plunges in value. Right, folks? Expect more bank failures. Right? If you're someone who's looking for an opportunity, figure out what people like hedge fund guru Bill Ackman has already figured out, which is that the rates are rising on the 10-year and the 20-year. Right, folks? You don't even need to know much more than that. Right? If you understand that long duration bonds have rising interest rates, you have an opportunity to buy an inverse ETF that profits when that occurs. One such inverse ETF is Direction's TMV. Again, the symbol is TMV. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.